Tall cliffs, small islands, and the unique mudflats of the Wadden Sea National Park. This is Germany's coastline. Seals and cetaceans, seabirds, and even stately stags populate the 2,400 kilometers of the North and Baltic Sea coasts. On the North Sea coast, the sky is big and the land fertile. Over thousands of years, the slow current has allowed silt and sediment to build up, forming intertidal mudflats. In 2009, the whole area was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Harbour seals find the peace and quiet they need on lonely sandbanks. They seem to be flourishing. The population is growing from year to year. At low tide, there's not much to do for these expert swimmers. The animals are enjoying a well-earned rest from the rigors of diving. High tide brings radical changes to the Wadden Sea. For the harbour seals, it's time to go hunting. They spend 3/4 of their lives catching fish. Water is their element. The wading bird's element is air. In April, they return from their winter quarters. It appears to be a choreographed display, with the flock a single entity, centrally controlled. Yet the birds orient themselves only to their immediate neighbours, spontaneously and individually. The Wadden Sea is a resting place for thousands of migrating birds. Every year, globetrotters like dunlins and bar-tailed godwits, grey plovers and red knots land on Germany's North Sea coast. Here they find crabs, shellfish and worms and can regenerate for the long flight to their northern breeding grounds. As dusk falls, flocks of geese move into their sleeping quarters in the salt meadows. Every high and low tide, the face of the Wadden Sea changes. The ripple marks in the sand are formed anew each day. Few species endure the constant changes from dry to wet and back again. Shore crabs are one. At low tide, everything buries itself in the wet sand. Even cockles dig in to prevent their shells from drying out. But no shell in the world can protect against an oyster catcher's beak. When the mussel beds appear at low tide, it's all you can eat. With up to 10 times as many life forms as other kinds of seabed, the Wadden Sea has a lot to offer. While the water forms the mudflats, wind and weather work on the dunes. What's removed in one place is banked up somewhere else. Oyster catchers have built their nest in a spot sheltered from the wind. The female gives a warning cry. She spotted a marsh harrier in the sky. The oyster catcher's strategy is simple. They leave the nest and trust in the natural camouflage color of their eggs. The raptor is distracted. It skillfully passes prey to its partner and is then free to see off a rival. All clear for the oyster catchers. All the eggs are there. Brooding can continue. The harrier also returns to its nest, hidden in the reeds. These birds brood on the ground. The German North Sea coast has plenty of food for the harrier's offspring. And they, in turn, can't get enough. The parents bring provisions several times a day. Not all the titbits are bite-sized, but that doesn't bother the young in the slightest. Helgoland, Germany's only deep-sea island. Once annexed as a British colony, it returned to German sovereignty at the end of the 19th century. Over the last 20 years, the sandy island of Dune next door has once again become home to an animal which had hitherto been regarded as extinct. Grey seals. Their return to the coast made them the biggest predator in Germany. At up to 300 kilos, the bulls weigh more than brown bears. They can easily be distinguished from other seals by their cone-shaped noses. Young bulls test their strength. Up to now, it's all play fighting. Life's real battles still lie ahead. There are now more than 400 grey seals in the state of Schleswig-Holstein. The North Sea is their hunting ground. The seal's attention is attracted by a cat shark. Every fish is potential prey. The shark decides to make a run for it. It tries to use its camouflage by staying close to the seabed. The seal is right behind it. When immobile, however, the shark is almost invisible. That was close. But the seaweed is the territory of a shore crab, and visitors are most definitely not welcome. How long can the shark withstand the crab's pinching? Its cover blown, the shark is soon rediscovered by the seal. But then the seal hesitates. Something is putting it off. Maybe the shark's rough skin? Cat sharks have scales like sandpaper. And that is its salvation. The grey seal decides to find somewhere to rest. This spot's already occupied, and the sitting tenant makes his feelings unmistakably clear. Showing your teeth is the strongest form of threat. Sensibly, the intruder decides to withdraw. Helgoland consists mainly of a single huge red cliff. At the beginning of the 1990s, one species of bird that had been hitherto practically unknown in Germany decided to settle here, the northern gannet. Over 20 years, the population has grown from one breeding pair in 1991 to a colony of about 400 pairs today. In the gannet world, brooding and rearing take an unusually long time. 4 months pass between mating and the young leaving the nest. Feeding the chicks alone takes 11 weeks. Gannets aren't the only breeding birds on Helgoland. They share Germany's smallest nature reserve, the 1-hectare Guillemot Rock, with other seabirds. The black-legged kittiwakes are already nesting, while the guillemots are still arguing about the best spots on the cliff. To keep their young supplied with food, the gannets head out to sea to look for fish. Once they've discovered a shoal, the hunt begins. The birds aren't the only ones looking for prey. They're joined by some harbour porpoises. While the gannets dive down as far as 3.5 meters, the porpoises surround the fish. Thanks to their sonar, they can locate prey over long distances in the murky water. Harbour porpoises are the only cetaceans that give birth and bring up their young off the coast of Germany. The feast lasts well past dusk. This is a very special evening. The sunset brings a spectacle only few have witnessed. One last colourful ray of sunlight, the rare green flash. "400 kilometers away lies the Baltic Sea island of Rügen, with its chalk cliffs, some as much as 120 meters high. This impregnable part of the coastline has been chosen as a breeding place by a pair of peregrine falcons. They've been making their nest here for the last 6 years. So far, they're the only pair to have discovered the cliff. At the beginning of the 1970s, peregrine falcons had disappeared from North German skies altogether. The use of pesticides had driven them to the brink of extinction, and it took a program of reintroduction to the wild to bring them back. The bird's name derives from the Latin peregrinus, which means pilgrim. For the young offspring, the time has come to follow their wanderlust and leave the nest. The western Pomeranian Bodden, shallow stretches of water almost cut off from the Baltic by a series of spits and only connected to the sea by narrow channels. Long since missing from the region, grey seals have for some years now been sighted again off the coast of Rügen. Around 100 years ago there were still 200 seals here, which were mercilessly hunted by fishermen competing for the same fish. The Prussian government offered a bounty of 5 marks for every dead seal, with the last being killed in 1920. Today, about 15 grey seals live in the nature reserve off Rügen. Bodden are neither inland lakes nor sea. Their water is on the one hand too salty, and on the other not salty enough. Few animals survive here, but those that do thrive. Pike and perch. Predatory fish are particularly successful survivors. The abundance of fish in the Bodden are certainly one reason that the grey seals returned. A fish has laid its eggs on the edge of a rock. A lump sucker. The male is watching over the eggs on his own. His partner has long since disappeared into the depths of the Baltic. The father will go without food for the entire duration of the hatching period. He won't go hunting again for another 2 months. Protecting the eggs is important, as predators can appear at any moment. Shore crabs, for example. The lumpsucker's eggs would be ideal prey for the crustacean, but the father isn't about to let that happen. The fish, which can reach up to 70 centimeters in length, would, if necessary, take on enemies far bigger than itself. Seeing off the shore crab is child's play for the lumpsucker. Now it can return to fanning its eggs with oxygen-rich water. Islands of salt marsh grass in the Bodden. Some are used as sparingly as in the old days, with the grass being allowed to grow long before being mown for hay. Meadow brooders like the lapwing need just this cover to protect their chicks. Well camouflaged, they hatch on the ground. Only a few hours after hatching, lapwing chicks set out to discover the world. Their parents keep a watchful eye on them. Learning by copying. The fledglings' downy feathers don't yet keep them warm, so mother still regularly takes them under her wing. back to the North Sea. On Helgoland, an unusual summer spectacle awaits. Lange Anna, the towering monolith, and the neighbouring cliffs are the breeding ground for around 2,000 pairs of guillemots. Every centimetre of the sheer cliff face is occupied, with partner and nest being defended by all means necessary. Quarrels with the neighbours can last for ages, unless, of course, one or other of the parties happens to lose their balance. The guillemots lay their eggs straight onto the rock face. Thanks to their shape, the eggs roll in a circle and only rarely fall off. Besides guillemots and kittiwakes, a few razorbills also nest in the wall. The birds get their food from the sea. Guillemots certainly don't give the impression of being particularly secure in the air. Their wings are better designed for flying underwater, where they hunt for sand eels. Guillemot chicks are constantly hungry, but their parents can only transport one fish at a time back to the cliff face. To stop hungry neighbours stealing the catch, the parent birds feed their young furtively under their wings. After about 3 weeks, the parents end their strenuous feeding efforts and the first chicks start to get nervous. They're not yet able to fly, so if they want fish, they'll have to jump. Those jumping in daylight become themselves easy prey. Outside the safety of the colony, the young guillemot has to fend for itself. If the older birds don't follow the chick down, its fate is as good as sealed. It may seem cruel, but the seagulls also have young to feed. When twilight falls, the chick's chances of survival rise considerably. Each decides for itself when it is ready to jump. This time the parents follow the chicks down and accompany them out to sea. The North Sea island of Amrum. Broad dunescapes and few people. At 10 square kilometres, Kniepsand is one of the biggest beaches in northern Europe. Those seeking tranquility find it here. The dunes are up to 6 kilometers wide. Many beaches along the North and Baltic seas are breeding grounds for ringed plovers and little terns. These are the smallest terns in Europe. The freshly hatched chick is as big as a matchbox. The nests are regularly raided by foxes. The parents defend their young with vehemence. Successfully, this time at least. Today, the little tern chick is being fed fish for the first time. The first steps are always the hardest, especially when the second adult bird disappears with the food. The next attempt. As in the rest of the natural world, here too the young learn fast. The most northerly point of the Baltic Sea island of Rügen, with its landmarks, the Cap Arcona lighthouses. At its nest off the coast, the ever-hungrier lumpsucker blows oxygen-rich water over its eggs. At last, the larvae hatch. The male has been holding out for a good 2 months and has successfully defended the spawn against enemies. Having done its duty, it will, this very evening, disappear into the depths of the Baltic. The Waddensee mudflats make up Germany's largest national park. It's the biggest area of mudflats in the world and has created a unique landscape which, due to the tides, is in a constant state of flux. In June, the harbour seals give birth. Their numbers are at a record high, with more than 20,000 between Denmark and the Netherlands. The pups are always born at low tide. Until the sea returns, the young drink their fill and recover from the exertions of birth. Just 6 hours later, they have to be able to swim with their parents. That's why they're born with open eyes and thick fur. They love riding piggyback on their mothers' backs. It saves energy on the long journey until they reach land again. Seals can dive and swim from birth. The pup at once feels at home in the cold waters of the North Sea. Its insulating layer of fat keeps it nice and warm. Where the sea ends, the marshlands begin. They lie only just above sea level. In many places, the groundwater is high enough to fill ponds and lakes. One species in particular benefits from these wetlands, one that you would usually expect to find in more exotic regions. The spoonbill is a summer guest in the North Sea. It's feeding time. The parents have caught fish, frogs, and all manner of smaller creatures. These beautiful birds haven't been native here for long. Only in the 1990s did a few birds move from their winter quarters in Africa to northern Germany. Today, Germany is home to a few hundred breeding pairs of spoonbill. The long crest of hair on the back of the neck is only present at breeding time. Thanks to the shelter of the national park, the population of spoonbills spending the summer by the North Sea is steadily growing. Of more concern are the Montagu's harriers. In the 1980s, numbers fell to below 50 pairs. But since farmers and wildlife organisations started working together, the situation has improved somewhat. At least now there are about 450 pairs in Germany again. But it will take a while until the survival of these rare raptors is secured. On the Baltic, it's September and the summer is coming to an end. Time for the red deer to migrate to their mating grounds. The deer have been assembling in these meadows for centuries. Even the Vikings encountered these mighty animals near the Baltic Sea. That the deer can still live in unspoiled nature today is thanks to the Vorpommersche Boddenlandschaft National Park. New travellers are arriving from the north across the Baltic Sea. Cranes. The long flight south is exhausting, and this is the perfect place for a stopover. These birds of fortune are heading for fields that have already been harvested, where they can regenerate. Every autumn, around 60,000 use the coast as a resting place. Once the cranes are full up, they fly to the Baltic Sea lagoons. Their sleeping places are in the shallow Bodden, between mainland and islands. A fascinating sight, not only for humans. The crane's winter quarters lie in France, Spain and North Africa. The Bodden near Zingst offers somewhere to sleep for 20,000 cranes. The next morning, it's time to go. With the sunrise, the birds set off on the long flight south. They won't return until the spring. Hard on the heels of the cranes follow the first storms of autumn. Life on Germany's coasts is getting increasingly harsh. Now only seasoned, storm-proof flyers take to the skies. Even in this weather, seagulls can tack against the wind. Amidst the storms, Helgoland offers a safe haven. Starlings, too, have taken refuge on the island. They'll wait for the worst of the weather to pass before continuing their journey. Again and again, individual birds test the flock's readiness to leave. Not until the wind dies down are a few birds able to start a chain reaction that then causes the whole flock to take off. On the Helgoland dune, grey seals give birth at the most inhospitable time of year. The young are born with pure white coats. This female is already experiencing labour contractions. Not long to go now. The newly born pup has hiccups. And a good thing too. This will help it clear its airways and stop amniotic fluid getting into its lungs. Mother and baby greet each other affectionately. They recognize each other by smell and voice. There's hardly any time to recover. An obtrusive bull approaches. It's the mating season and the males are courting the females. the bull could present a danger to the pup. The mother shows no mercy. The danger is over. The male has got the message, for the moment. At last, the pup can suckle. Thanks to the nutritious milk, it puts on up to 2 kilos a day. In just 4 weeks, the pup will have to fend for itself. Until then, it has to grow an awful lot. If the baby is male, it could end up weighing 300 kilos, like this bull. Relaxing in an icy sea. The frosty January temperatures are no problem for either the mother seal or her baby. Immediately after the birth, the mother watches over and suckles her pup without interruption. Just a few days later, the mother will only come to suckle every 6 hours. The rest of the time, the pup will be on its own on the beach. Next door, trouble is brewing. It's mating time, and the bulls are defending their harems. Fights like these often end in bloody scenes that the summer tourists would find hard to imagine on their bathing beaches. In the end, the loser withdraws. And the proud winner can claim the spoils of victory. He is now king of this section of beach. The harem is his, along with the affection of the females. For these two, it takes a while to find their happy ending. Thus, the grey seals on Germany's coasts can look forward to welcoming a new batch of offspring into the world next year.